Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be doing another review roundup. For anybody who's new here to the channel, it's something that I do when I want to cover a couple of movies that I've wanted to cover here on the channel. And in the case of the three movies that we're covering today, one is the brand new film that Disney Plus recently dropped last weekend. I did watch it last weekend and we're going to get into why I'm covering it now, but there's also two films that I covered on two other people's channels that I also am going to be covering here today, and I will leave links down below to the videos I also did on these movies over on their channels. But I like to cover what I can here on the channel, and sometimes I want to just kind of squish it together into one video, do a quick review roundup for you guys. So these are a little bit of a quicker, straight to the point review for all of these films. But without further ado, let's get into this. But before I do so, I do want to mention, in case you did not see my video 2 videos ago, this is my first regular review sitting in my setup here, back to normal after the passing of my dog Charlie. I made a whole video on it. I talked all about it. It's a very sad video, I'm not gonna lie to you, but I'm back to making normal reviews here in front of my setup with my mic and all that jazz. So a big thanks to the big support that you guys have been giving me in the last 2 videos as I've come back to making videos. I was a little worried that my views weren't gonna really be there at all, but I am very appreciative to all of you guys who have been incredibly supportive after the passing of my pet, as well as just all of you guys giving me all this love about my new collab review that I did with my buddy Mike from Did You See That? So without further ado, let's get into the first review for Disney's Pinocchio. Directed by Robert Zemeckis and starring people like Tom Hanks, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Benjamin Evan Heisworth, and also having a great score from Alan Silvestri. This is the brand new live-action Disney remake, this time around for Pinocchio. Now, if you've been watching this channel for quite some time, it's no surprise to you that I am a huge fan of Disney. Live action, animated, whether it's an old-timey classic or something that's a little bit more modern, the old Disney Channel original movies, whatever the case may be, I have covered a lot of Disney here, and it's definitely something I have a lot of nostalgia for. The theme parks, the TV channel, the movies, the TV movies, whatever the case may be, I have always been a huge Disney fan, and I've covered tons of that here on the channel with plenty more to still cover here on the channel. And so when it comes to Pinocchio, I haven't covered the original film from literally almost 80 years ago at this point. But yeah, I love that film. I grew up enjoying it. It was always one of the more creepy films at times, especially when it comes to the certain sound design and the timeless charm of its animation. But yeah, you know, it's a simplistic, straightforward film that has some of the most iconic imagery, characters, and music in all of the Disney lineup. And so when I heard they were making a live action film and that Tom Hanks was involved, I was all in. I couldn't wait to see what was gonna happen. And then I heard that it was going to Disney Plus. And I'm not gonna lie when I say I was a little bit disappointed on that point alone, simply because I love that when they put these films in theaters, they typically have a pretty nice budget. I would say my favorite of these Disney live action films so far has been The Jungle Book, which I would argue is the only one that is actually better than its original film. Some people might think that's blasphemy, but I genuinely think that The Jungle Book film, the remake from 2016, definitely brought something new and different to that movie, while also telling us a familiar story that we already have some sort of attachment to. But in the case of Pinocchio, it got the Disney Plus treatment, similar to what they did with The Lady and the Tramp live action remake, which I did enjoy and I covered here on the channel, as well as the original Lady and the Tramp and its sequel, Scamp's Adventure. And even though I still appreciate the original Lady and the Tramp a little bit more, I did enjoy the remake, and I enjoy that they brought some new elements to it. But I was able to understand with that film a little bit why they did that and threw it on Disney Plus, because it didn't necessarily need the biggest budget to tell its story and do what it needed to do. But in the case of Pinocchio here, a film that in the original does have some pretty big set pieces, yeah, I was very curious to see what they were going to do, and unfortunately, I'm not so happy to say that I was just kind of when it comes to this film. There were elements about this film that I did thoroughly enjoy. I enjoyed certain elements of the visuals. I enjoyed Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jiminy Cricket and the young boy Benjamin Evan Ainsworth who played Pinocchio. I felt that they really captured the spirits of the original characters from the original movie, and I overall enjoyed their voice work. The young boy Benjamin who plays Pinocchio, he is a bit wooden at times, no pun intended. But other than that, I did find that overall the performances from our cast were pretty solid. However, Tom Hanks was a little bit off for me in this film. Something about his accent just didn't really sound authentic. It just sounded weird. It sounded like a dude from America with a, a bit of a southern accent trying to put on a European accent. It didn't really work for me, to be completely honest. But beyond that, when I first heard of the casting and all that stuff, I was hyped. And unfortunately, the movie was just okay for me. This movie takes exactly what the original film was and retells it with a couple of minor changes, a couple of things that are omitted and a couple of things that are added, but nothing that ever really felt like it was super necessary, and nothing about this film ever really stood out for me as the iteration of Pinocchio that people are going to watch moving forward. Now, sure, there are some kids from today that might actually really get attached to this film and love it years down the line, but I think as, we live in a world where there's so many films on things like Disney Plus, I feel like this is kind of going to get lost, and when people think, let's watch Pinocchio, they're more often going to throw on the original film versus throwing on this live action version that for me is a sanitized cookie cutter version of the original movie. Now, like I mentioned, there are things I enjoyed, and overall, like I mentioned, the things that I really enjoyed, Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio, and the time spent with them I thought was genuinely my favorite parts of the film. And so when we primarily have characters that are animated in a world that has a live action look to it, I enjoyed the look and the aesthetic of the film. However, when we do have humans in these same shots, yeah, it just didn't fully work. There was so much green screen and so many moments of CGI that honestly just looked unfinished. There were elements of the special effects of this film that kept taking me out of it, and me and the others that I was watching with, my fiance and my buddy, the Big Rob Theory, yeah, we just kept watching the film and having to kind of be pulled out of it and making these little comments on some of the CGI at times in the green screen because it just looked so fake. And when we have Disney live action remakes that have looked as good or have balanced a good balance of, cartoony CGI and more realistic CGI, it's tough to watch this and be like, oh yeah, that's 100% fine and passable, especially when a studio like Disney is the ones behind it, with a director like Robert Zemeckis involved and a composer like Alan Silvestri. Overall, you have really talented people in front of the camera, behind the camera, and the studio overall has so much money that it is a shame to see a film that has one of the most iconic bits of music from any Disney thing that is still used to intro all Disney movies. It is a shame that this movie didn't get a theatrical release with a bigger budget, because when you look at things like The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast or the Jungle Book, these films have looked phenomenal. Whatever your thoughts on the story and how they compare to the original film, anything really that they've released theatrically, even things like Pete's Dragon, which I wasn't really crazy about, that remake, yeah, those films have all looked phenomenal. They've all had incredible CGI. So for me, it's not even a case of, oh, they didn't have, the good CG work in this film. It just felt like a budgetary situation where they kind of just let the CG kind of take a dip. And ultimately, it kind of just had me distracted the whole movie. I don't really think there's much about this film that really adds to the original film. I don't think this is going to be a definitive watch for most people. I just thought it was okay, and it's a Disney live action remake that I can't see myself revisiting very often, which is a shame because I was looking forward to it. Moving on back now to 1995 for Casino, directed by Martin Scorsese and starring an all-star cast of people like Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Sharon Stone, James Wood, and many others. This is a movie I actually covered over on my buddy Rashad G Reviews channel, and I'll leave a link to that video down below. We did a full live stream discussion about the entire movie, so if you want to hear a full spoiler discussion on everything that happens in the movie, definitely go check out that video. But yeah, as far as my quick thoughts right here in the video, this is definitely without a doubt one of my favorite Martin Scorsese films. The tension that this film builds over the course of time is just so interesting, and what I love about a film like this is that you have a bunch of characters that you really can't root for. At times, you can kind of root for the character of Ace, played by Robert De Niro, and he's definitely the most compelling character here. But yeah, this is a movie where you're watching essentially a bunch of terrible people in a really drama-filled, tension-filled story, and it's just really interesting to see all the ups and downs and the lefts and right and the different things that Martin Scorsese brings to his films. Without a doubt, this is just definitely one of those iconic films from the 90s with phenomenally realistic performances. There's something about Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci in this film, and everybody else really, but those two, their dialogue, their chemistry, and their natural, very realistic feel and vibe over the course of the film is really what makes this film engaging to watch. Majority of this film is dialogue. It is an entirely dialogue heavy film that is 3 hours long, and ultimately I never found myself bored watching this film. I was engaged with pretty much every scene. This is a film that for me, for the kind of movie it is, it's damn near perfect. There are little minor things here or there that you might nitpick at. I can see this movie being a little bit overly long or boring for some, but for me it kept me engaged with good performances, good dialogue, dialogue, great set design, great location. And overall, this is a film that takes place in Las Vegas that's filled with casinos and money and greed and sex and drugs and gangs and different things like that, that ultimately just is exciting from beginning to end. It is a movie I highly recommend if you've never seen it. And then moving on to 2016 with a film called Collateral Beauty, directed by David Frankel, who's directed things like Marley and Me and The Devil Wears Prada. This film stars a crazy big cast with Will Smith, Edward Norton, Kate Winslet, Michael Pena, Helen Mirren, Keira Knightley, Naomi Harris, and many others. And the basic premise of this film is you have this guy played by Will Smith, who's the CEO of this company, who lost his daughter in some sort of tragic accident. I don't want to get too deep into spoilers, but pretty much he's lost his way and he's kind of starting to run his business to the ground. And then his co-workers, who are played by Edward Norton, Kate Winslet, and Michael Pena, who are also really close friends of him, who started this business with him, decide to do a pretty shady thing on the side, hiring these 3 actors to play time, love, and death. And they come to visit him almost like, you know, the ghost of Christmas past, in a way where he believes he's the only person seeing these individuals who are giving him some sort of life lessons. And over the course of the film, he has to kind of learn to heal his heart, and he kind of learns to do that through these actors who are playing these roles. And I don't want to get too deep into spoilers because there are some big reveals that happen later on. Overall, what I'll say about this film is I found it to be a well-acted film. I was overall entertained by watching it, but it isn't a film I can see myself watching too often. And I will say that one of the reveals near the end of the film didn't really fully work for me. I need to maybe rewatch the film again and kind of let it seep with me a little bit more. This is a film I remember people not really loving when it originally came out. I was working at a Cinemark theaters at the time, and I remember, you know, selling people tickets to the movie and kind of hearing mixed reviews when they came out, but I never really knew much about the movie itself, and I never saw it around that time. So a big thanks to my buddy Dave from Interpreting the Stars, who actually invited me on to talk about it on his YouTube channel, and you guys can find the link to that down below in the description box. But yeah, you know, these are 3 movies that I just wanted to talk about here on the channel. When it comes to Collateral Beauty, overall, I found it to be an entertaining film with a, you know, heart-tugging story at times, but it could be a little bit boring at times, and ultimately I found a lot of the characters to be unlikable, even if I did find them to have a decent journey over the course of the film. I do think it's a very clever and interesting film, by no means a bad film like I have seen some people say online, but overall I enjoyed the film for what it was. I found it entertaining and visually enticing as well. I enjoyed the look of the film, and you have great actors giving great performances. Not a film I'm rushing to revisit, but one I wanted to at least talk about here on the channel and ask you guys what you thought about that movie. But not only do I want to hear what you have to say about Collateral Beauty, I want to hear what you have to say about the new Pinocchio on Disney Plus, the 2022 remake, as well as Casino from 1995. 3 very different films, you know, a family, kid-friendly film, a very adult film in Casino, and then a heart-tugger when it comes to Collateral Beauty. If I had to rank them in terms of the way I enjoyed them, I would say Casino is without a doubt at the top, with a pretty steep margin until we get to Collateral Beauty, and then Pinocchio is down there below it. But I might argue that Pinocchio is a little bit more rewatchable than Collateral Beauty, in my personal opinion, whereas I found myself a little bit more entertained watching Pinocchio than Collateral Beauty, even if I think Collateral Beauty is a better film. So a big thanks to you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this quick rundown of these films. I know I talked a little bit more on Pinocchio, but I figured since that's the newer film, you guys probably want to hear a little bit more about that one. I will be getting back to my normal review cycle here on the channel, but I just want to say again, a big thanks to you guys for understanding why I was gone for so long and for giving me so much support here on the channel as I've returned. And I look forward to starting to drop more content to talk to you guys about more movies. So a big thanks to you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.